The Roz and Mocha Show. KiSS 92.5.
Slash, dude, it is an honor. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Right out of the gate, I have to ask you, are you Jewish or not?
No, I'm not Jewish. It's an urban myth.
Are you sure?
I'm in the book of Jewish famous people, which is, I think it's because my real name is Saul, spelled S-A-U-L, which is really Saul, but Saul. And I think people just assumed that I was Jewish. And I have a lot of Jewish friends, so maybe they told, I don't know.
I mean, because Saul is a very... Are you sure?
I'm actually named after Saul Steinberg.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
I
just found that out recently. My dad told me. And he sent me the book, which when I was a kid, I loved this guy's artwork, but I just didn't know that that's where my name came from. Because my dad, that was one of my dad's favorite painters, and he was like, my mom wasn't going to allow him to call me Pablo or any other his other favorite painters names that were just too recognizable. So Saul.
That's fine. Now, how did Slash come to be then?
Slash came from my best friend's dad, who is a pretty well-known character actor named Seymour Cassell. And Seymour, I used to spend a lot of time over at their house, and he used to call me Slash, basically just because I would never stop to like sit down and talk. Everything was always in passing. I was always working on my next whatever it was. And so he always saw me in passing, so he just started calling me Slash. You know?
I don't know where to look on you because I'm seeing me in your glasses, so I'm just looking at your lips, which are fantastic. Now, you've collaborated with so many people. You've collaborated with legends like Michael Jackson and Mariah Carey.
Never Mariah Carey.
Really?
I've never worked with Mariah Carey. I've worked with some other female artists. As recently I did a song with, now I can't remember her name.
It's okay. We'll cut that out.
Yeah, well, Fergie, obviously.
Fergie. Yeah, and Fergie. Yeah. Is there somebody out there that you would absolutely love to collaborate with? And is there somebody who you absolutely will not collaborate with?
It doesn't work like that. I'm sure, I mean, there's a lot of people that I'm sure I would love to collaborate with, but it's not one of those things where you sit and you go, oh, I'd love to work with this person, seek them out. It's just things happen, circumstances present themselves where you're in the same room and you're talking about music or at a bar or whatever it is. And you just, and I jump at the chance to be able to work in these different environments. So that's how that happens. They're very spontaneous. I can't say that there's anybody that I'm thinking of that I'm consciously like, I would never work with that person. You just sort of see where, things fall.
So we may one day see you twerking on stage with Miley Cyrus.
And that's really not going to happen.
See, there's the one. That's no.
Okay, well now that you mention it.
Okay, now... you've sort of left the stage for the screen, and you've always loved horror movies, but right now you're focusing on horror, which is funny because in the 80s, you and all the guys were horror for a lot of parents.
Well, yeah, definitely. Well, the thing is I didn't, I actually started working on this movie while I was doing the last record and the last tour. And so now that the movie's coming out, now I'm working on the next record, and inevitably there'll be a tour for that, and I'll probably be working on the next movie at that same time. So it all sort of goes in tandem.
Now, this movie is fantastic, by the way.
Oh, you got to see it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool.
They rushed over a screener to my condo. That's how I roll.
All right. I didn't even get that.
Movie is fantastic, called Nothing Left to Fear. And can you tell me first off a little bit about the town that everybody's in? It's so cool.
Well, I wasn't there for the writing of the story. It was presented to me in its complete form, but it was influenced by a town, which is a real place in rural Kansas called Stull. And Stull has this folklore to, at least on the internet, which says that it's one of the 7 gateways to hell, and all these incidents that have allegedly happened there. There's a haunted church, which is actually right next to this old cemetery that's apparently the gateway. And they've got witch burnings and this and that going back to the 1700s. So the guy who wrote the story must have heard about all this and thought, oh, this would make a great basis for a story, which it did. And I'm dying to go there. They wouldn't let us film there.
Oh, no kidding.
They don't welcome the sensationalism that goes with the myth of their town. They say none of it's true. Anyway, so that's all debatable.
Now, I want to find out, because they're not the only sort of, I guess, rock legend who has also done horror movies. There's Rob Zombie. Have you ever thought of maybe collaborating with him one day on a movie, like there's rock operas, why not rock horror? And you and Rob, oh dude, if this is the first time you've heard this is gold.
No, Rob and I have talked about it. I didn't have a movie out about to be released at the time, so I was saying, well, I'm getting into production, and he was like, well, he's already got like 5 or 6 movies under his belt.
Yeah.
But the idea of maybe at some point, him directing like a particular story that would work with slasher films and all that kind of stuff, it's something that is possible.
Huge.
But as of right now, he's out of the horror movie business and doing something else.
Now, I have to go back a little bit and talk a little bit more, because it's not often I get to talk to rock legends like yourself, and it's just fascinating to me about why you get into it. I don't know if it's obviously the love of music, but there's also sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Is it like when you see movies about the rock age and stuff, is it like that? Are there girls falling all over you? Is there drugs all over the table? Is it just the life we all want to live?
There's anything that I've seen, for the most part,
and be honest.
No, I am. Depicting rock and roll lifestyle and all that stuff is all usually laughable. There's only a handful of movies that I think have sort of really captured the spirit of what that's all about. And there, to some extent, there's the girl thing, and to some extent, there's the drug thing, and all that stuff is sort of real. But the reality of how it all comes about is a lot different, But it's hard to paint a verbal picture of what that is.
Do you want to try?
No,
are you doing body shots off naked women in the dressing room before you go on? Like, I need to live vicariously through you.
Well, all things considered, I'm sober now, so I'm not doing any kind of lines off girls' asses anymore. But I've done a lot of all that kind of stuff. But it's better just to sort of use your imagination, and you're probably not too far off.
Is there anything you regret from the 80s and stuff? Is there anything that you regret that you're like, I wish I never did that?
No, I don't believe in regrets. You live and learn, and you do what you do, and you take the good with the bad. And I haven't been, I've never harmed anybody.
You take the good, you take the bad.
Yeah, there you go. and that's part of life. So that's it. So I don't regret anything.
Now back to the movie. Why should people check this out? Because you're not into like gore and stuff like. It's a different kind of horror that you're really into.
Well, it's not really necessarily what you call it different. Well, maybe in what you consider contemporary horror, there's been a lot of emphasis on the gore aspect of it, which is fine. But I think in a lot of these movies, the story gets left in the dust, and the character development sort of is not really important. And I sort of miss that, because the movies I was raised with were all these really great, haunting, interesting stories that were really psychologically scary and things that made you jump. And that's what I sort of missed, and I think that was one of the reasons when I was given the opportunity to produce that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go in that direction. So it's not really different, but it is sort of produced in a sort of old school, I'd say almost 70s kind of fashion.
Which is when this kind of movie was at its prime.
Right.
Now I think effects and stuff ruin things. I think the direction you're going is perfect.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd like to think that, well, at least for me, for my particular taste. But then, as of late, that movie, The Conjuring, came out, which is a really good indicator that audiences are actually going for the more story-driven and concept or a character-driven movie, as opposed to let's see how many people. Saw wasn't bad. That was an interesting story. But then there was all the sequels that got worse and worse and worse.
But that's the problem with sequels, right? Like when you do sequels to things, they're always progressively.
Sometimes they're okay. But you have your destinations 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and all that kind of stuff.
Those are cheesy.
and Final Destination. Yeah. And that really just becomes like, kids are buying it. Let's just make it real quick, slap it together, and put some good shock in there, and whatever. But there are some actually really good gore movies that have some interesting plots to them, and gore is not necessarily the only motivation in the making of the movie. There's some story factor and some interesting stuff, and they're just brutal, and some of them are good and whatnot. But I like the kind of things, the thing that scare me the most are the ones that I'm left to my imagination.
Not where there's like the music where it's like dun dun dun. Like you don't want the story to tell what you're expecting. Like you want to figure it out for yourself.
Well, yeah, music sometimes can build up okay. I don't want to, because I'm a big I mean, obviously I'm doing music for this last one that you just saw, and that was a really important component. It's an important component to any film, is to have the appropriate music and have that really sort of provide the ambience for the vibe of the movie.
Now, forgive me if maybe I'm wrong, but you're also really big on soundtracks as well. And does the soundtrack play a big part in the things that you do film-wise now?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the attractions to being a producer was knowing that I would be responsible for getting the music together, whether I performed it or somebody else performed it, but being hands-on with the music. And so in this particular movie, I wrote a lot of the music, and then I gave it to a scoring composer / sound design guy who interpreted the music into an orchestral format.
Brilliant.
And it was a lot of fun to do. A lot of work, but a lot of fun.
And that's what you get when you get somebody like yourself who has a music background and a film background, is you're going to get balls to the walls brilliance.
That's sort of the goal.
That's my quote. Balls to the walls, brilliance.
All right. And so I'm looking for the next one and really into it. I've got my sort of feet wet, and I'm looking for the next story and all that.
Now, you've always been into this kind of stuff because it was also reflected in music videos that you've done and stuff. This has always been an interest to you.
It's been a thing for me. I've been a fan of the horror film since I could sit down and watch TV when I was a little kid. And my parents were supportive of it. They were big horror nuts, and so they turned me on to like all the classics, be it literature or movies, and took me to some of the best horror movies I've still to this day have ever seen. So it's always been there. Yeah.
I have no one to go to horror movies with. When you're in trouble, we got to do this, because like my fiance, I can't go. I have no one to go with, and I adore these kind of films.
Do you really? Well, see, you got to find a good partner. I'm on the road a lot, so it might be hard. But I have to say, when I was first talking with this producer partner, then he was just somebody that I was talking to who owned a big production company. He was one of the first guys that I had a full-blown conversation with about horror. So I've been holding this and just sort of me carrying around this like passion by myself.
No, it's out there, man. There's a bigger community for horror films than regular films. Like it's such a huge following, even in Toronto.
And it's very loyal, and actually horror reminds me a lot of like real heavy metal. It's its own sort of niche, and it's always there. It's sort of has its own rules, and the fans are completely loyal and passionate about it. And it's the same with like hardcore metal. Like people, no matter whether it's mainstream, it's never really mainstream, but there's always this huge fan base that's always there. It's great.
Last two questions for you. I'd be an idiot if I didn't ask. You working on new music? Is new stuff going to be coming out? Your fans want to know, like, what can we expect?
Yeah.
Are you also going to be hitting the road again, or what?
We'll have a new record out. I'd like to say spring of next year. We're way in front of it right now, and we're working on material for it now. And I'm going to start rehearsing, doing what you call sort of pre-production next month. Yeah. And it looks like it's all going to be pretty fast going, and should be ready for spring, and we'll be out on the road next summer.
And singers sometimes sing in the shower. You're a guitarist, genius at it. Do you ever catch yourself like air guitaring when there's not a guitar on? Are you in the guitar? Because in the car, I air drum. Do you air guitar? And do you critique people's air guitaring and tell them they're crap?
Okay. I personally do not air guitar. And I get embarrassed for people that do air guitar. Although I've seen some videos of people that are pretty amazing at air guitar. If you get past the sort of laugh factor, of watching somebody emulate playing a guitar and jumping off of stuff and going through all the motions.
Dude, there's an air guitar championship.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm.
I don't know how you win that.
I mean, I've seen guys do stuff that physically looks like they should have an instrument, from moving their fingers to, their whole sort of stage persona that they put on, and some of the acrobatic stuff that they do. It's pretty awesome, but it's also like one of those things that I cringe at.
Awesome, dude. Such an honor to meet you. One of my favorite interviews I've done in a long time. You're truly a class act. Thank you.
Nice meeting you, too.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
The Roz and Mocha Show. KiSS 92.5.